We often think that culture is reserved for B2C brands, but actually, it's a great growth tool for B2B brands. What a client believes actually impact how they buy, what they trust, and what they champion.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Marketing Blender Show. I am Dacia Coffey, and today I am joined by Leshawnda Larkin, one of our Fractional Chief Marketing Officers, and it's her first time on the show. You know I love to bring in these brilliant people. So Leshawnda, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to be here with you all today.
I love this. So the topic that she's bringing to us today is about how to leverage culture to really drive B2B organizational growth. And it's interesting because we were chatting off camera that this is really something that business to business organizations leave on the table. And so I'm super excited to dive into what does that mean? How are they doing that? Why is this a blind spot? But before we dive in, you've kind of got an amazing background, and I think the audience needs to hear this. So LaShanda has huge B2C, big brand she'll tell you about in just a minute, but she's also deployed go-to-market strategies for tech. I mean, like helped create markets and has worked with companies large and small. So we're talking a lot of robust experience, but always from a heart-forward perspective, which I think is special. So tell everybody a little bit more about your background specifically.
Yes, I have about 20 plus years of experience working at a lot of Fortune 500 companies, a wide spectrum of those companies, from food and beverage. I've spent time working at Dr. Pepper, to actually working at PepsiCo, Frito-Lay. I also spent a little bit of time working in healthcare, Johnson & Johnson, to consumer electronics with Samsung. And my last experience was with Dolby, not Adobe, but Dolby, which is really centered around entertainment tech, particularly focused on vision and sound. Now I'm taking all of those learnings from all those different experiences and bringing them to small and medium-sized companies. I think that there's great opportunity there, and I'm excited to be in this space.
Yeah, it is so fun. Now, this not only have you been around organizations where culture permeated everything, but especially the brand, but also this is just kind of who you are too, like from a values perspective and just bringing authenticity, whether individual or organizational. But you recently saw a speaker, and so tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, so I read this book called For the Culture, and it's written by Dr. Marcus Collins, who is a professor at University of Michigan, their business school. And I attended an event here in Dallas about a month ago, and so I was able to actually meet with him and chat with him, and we bonded over our love of yacht rock.
Let's go.
But in this book, he really talks about how important culture is, and really that is probably the most biggest factor in human decision making.
Yeah.
I know sometimes as a marketer we think, oh, it's the ads, it's the algorithm, but he believes that it's really culture.
Yeah.
And so the book is primarily written from a B2C perspective, but I started to ponder and started to think, is there anything that can be pulled or gleaned from a B2B perspective? And I definitely think that there is something there that really, it is a great growth tool, I think, for B2B companies that a lot of them are not really thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, there's like two decision trees that I want to unpack so much, but you started with saying it's about decision making. So talk a little bit more about that. Like, what does culture represent? Why is it that important? And what does he say about it? And what did you really take away from that?
So he defines culture as basically a system of beliefs or symbols that really shape how people think about things.
Yeah.
And so when you start thinking about it from a B2B perspective, the people that you're interacting with, they're human. And so they're looking through this lens of culture and deciding if they want to work with you. You might not think about it because, again, from a B2B perspective, you kind of think about things from a logic perspective, a functionality perspective, a feature perspective. But I also want you to think about things from a culture perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's that silly cliche that's not really a cliche, like everywhere you go, there you are. And for instance, if somebody's buying a sports car, right? Some people buy sports car because it's fun. Some people because they love the engine and they're motorheads, gearheads, where they just love the performance. Some are like, oh, well, it's keeping up with the Joneses. Or some people are like, this was my dream car. This proved that I made it. And we could literally just list out a dozen different reasons that somebody would buy a sports car, right? But they can be pretty diverse. And they bring that to every buying decision, whether they believe in quality, whether they believe in the brand, what they believe about themselves. It's not like, oh, what we spend on in our personal life, and that idea of like the Amazon halo effect. We all start being like, no, we expect everything to be that easy.
Yeah, and if we take the automobile, that space, I mean, you definitely see culture coming through. If you think about Corvette and how people get together and show off their Corvette, that's a culture that's defined, and actually that the company itself is promoting and fostering that is coming from the people who own Corvettes.
Yeah, exactly.
Or if you think about Harley Davidson and motorcycles, I mean, that is huge from a culture perspective and how it's ingrained in who the people are and how they operate and how they move, in the world today.
Exactly. No, I think it's interesting because you're saying, you're referencing how sometimes consumers and buyers are building or opting into the culture of the company. And I think so frequently people don't realize, like leaders automatically think, oh, culture's only internal, or it's what I am trying as a leader to set for my team. So is culture really that big? Is it pervasive beyond the walls of a company? And kind of how do you see that?
I think it can be. I mean, I think when you think about it, it's defined by what people believe, what they see, what they're surrounded by. You can foster the culture through the people that you have as a part of your organization, but then also you can attract clients and fans because of what you exude out externally as well.
Do you know, I love that. And it does make so much sense. It's almost like there's a virtuous cycle there, because so your company builds something or offers something, has a service or delivery method of something, right? And the people that all work there infuse that and their core values that people are rallying around, which then get built into what we deliver. And so then that resonates with the customers. And if they start really opting in for those core values in true alignment, like I'm not just picking the product or the service, but I'm also picking that brand, I'm picking that company, then the people inside get more excited because they're like, these are our people, not just you're my people because we're team members, and like we're picking each other. It's literally like this community that is created where it's no longer just buyer and seller, but we're a tribe, and I feel like that word sometimes gets overused, but the heartbeat behind it and why it first started circulating is this idea that culture can go beyond your walls.
No, it's so true. I think sometimes we get so caught up in the product and what we're trying to sell that it's first from an internal perspective to gain that alignment with the people who are working on the product or service that you're developing or servicing, to align to what is it that we want to stand for.
Yes.
I actually had a conversation with a client recently who basically took a step back to really kind of align on their core values, and through that lens sort of looked at their team and started to eliminate people who necessarily didn't fit those core values. And now they have this army of people there that they're now seeing things working more efficiently, better, happier kind of situation. And then that then exudes out externally. And then what's great about it is that, when people are making decisions for their companies, yes, they're looking for the best product. But also, too, it also could be that extra factor, if this company is known for sustainability, if they're known for being modern, being forward-thinking, trailblazing, those are additional things that could add to the culture of the client that you're hopefully trying to go after.
Yes, absolutely. And that's sticky. Like we all have to make purchasing decisions, both in business as well as in your personal life. And wow, it feels good to believe in your dollars, as like a vote for that value, that group, that belief system. Like I just believe that your success is good for the world. And I'm going to opt in for making sure, that I'm aligned in my purchasing decisions. I just think it's so, so cool. Now, we're talking also about culture infusing brand. Now, I think a lot of people have a tendency to be like, I mean, yeah, but isn't a brand a logo in your website? So for you, like, how do you define brand and kind of like, what is the interplay between culture and brand?
Well, the brand is really a representation of really what you want to be, I guess, in the world. So yes, it could be a logo. A part of a brand is a logo. It could be their product. And culture to me helps reinforce, that brand, the values that you have. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, and you mentioned symbols.
Yes.
Earlier, like there are a reason that a lot of car manufacturers have shield or enclosed circles, kind of like an emblem, versus all of the different types of marks. But yeah, I mean, when well deployed, they stand for something, even if people only recognize it subconsciously, but it's in perfect alignment with the humanity behind it.
No, we know what McDonald's, the symbol is when you see it. If you see an automobile signal, for example, you just kind of recognize. And then when you see that symbol, there's elements that pop up from the brand and even culture that you associate with that brand.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, and employees want to be a part of something worth it, right? Like once the money is enough, like this is what I deserve, this is where I believe I am in my career, then the thinking does go higher to how do I want to work? Who do I want to work with? What does my work represent in the world? And is it something that I believe in, right? And, we know as chief marketing officers that the predictable break in aggressive growth is that you'll start losing your people or you won't be able to attract the talent fast enough if you're not really making sure that culture is protected and then infused into everything that you're doing, including the branding of your company, and all of the touch points so that it maintains that authenticity.
No, there's this line that talks about you want to show what you say, in a sense.
Yeah.
And so it's important that as you're talking about this is what you are or want to be, that you're showing that. You're showing that through your efforts. You're showing that through the community that you have fostered internally as well as externally as well. So very important.
Hey, Marketing Blender listeners, we have something exciting to share with you.
Our traditional YouTube show and podcast is expanding. We're going to be doing deeper dives on career, technology, innovations, and the stories behind amazing campaigns on our show.
Sometimes we have these conversations that are incredible, amazing. They've got wonderful ideas behind them, but don't quite fit within our traditional model here on The Blender Show.
Yes, a perfect example of that is career advice. We get a lot of questions about that. We also get a lot of questions about AI and how things are changing and what to expect. And sometimes the best stuff is what we didn't say on camera. So this new evolution is where these moments get their chance to shine.
Think of this as our creative workshop, where we get to explore everything from breaking into the marketing industry to innovative leadership approaches, even interviews with CEOs, but all within the high quality insights you've come to expect from the Blender team.
And the best part, everything's self-contained. Whether it's a single episode on a very specific deep dive, or sometimes we will be even doing mini series, you'll be able to get exactly what you want, when you want, where you want it.
You'll be able to find this as a playlist on all of your favorite platforms, the same place that you already get the Marketing Blender Show.
Oh, and tip, there is going to be some subscriber-only content, so little benefit for you that follow us every week.
So hit that subscribe button, stay tuned, and we'll see you guys soon.
Now, you had shared kind of 4 areas on like why this is so important and kind of like, and I love the specificity in this. And so the first one, you'd hinted at this one earlier, but it's about alignment with your market, that those buyers, B2B buyers, are still human. So like, let's touch back on that, and talk about it in the frame of brand.
I know a lot of times when we're thinking about our B2B client and who we're trying to go after, we're just, again, focused on the functionality, the features of the product. But at the end of the day, the person who is making the decision is human, and that they're making this decision through a lens of their experiences, their beliefs, and a dense culture. And so that's why it's important to really kind of understand what's important to the client, besides just the functionality.
Yeah.
But what is it that they believe? What is it that they're striving to be? And how is that your company can help add to that?
Exactly. And it's interesting because I sometimes laugh that sometimes B2B clients and B2B companies are just too smart for their own good, right? Because they built this amazing, better mousetrap. It doesn't matter whether it's a service, a professional service, or whether it's a widget or a SaaS product or something like that. But they were brilliant enough to deliver this amazing thing to the market. But then they fall in love with the functionality. Like, no, you don't understand. Like, we built it. And they forget, no, that thing creates transformation for another human being. Like, you're right. They're like, yeah, that's nice, fine, but I need it to do this thing for me. And it is representative of something so much bigger than just whether or not it was a better mousetrap, or whether or not you were the best offering on, And so I love that alignment, like back to the human. Okay, the second one, and this is so apropos for your background. I'm like, oh, I'm so glad you're mentioning this one. It's that culture and brand, this matters for innovation. And I think this is going to surprise some people. So why do you say that?
No, I suggest that because as you start to fall in line with the culture and believe that it can help with building communities to help with the adoption of new innovation. And so when you think about technology companies are probably great examples, AI, SaaS, just et cetera, they've been able to really kind of tap into these communities because of the culture that they've defined and built to really help drive innovation. If you take Salesforce, for example, yes, it's a CRM platform, but they've really developed this system around trailblazers, this community of people, and they're known for being, forward-thinking, purpose-driven, a modern sort of tech company, and that ties into, culture.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and okay, innovation, especially the R&D side of it, can be so expensive if not well defined. But instead, if it's community driven, where there's this great cycle of listening and paying attention, being really in lockstep with your community, then there could be a practical aspect where you are closer to the point of true value creation versus innovation for innovation's sake. So the community component is such a big deal. And that's brand building. Yes. That when you evolve your product to better serve your market, and they're like, these guys just keep getting better and better. That is a culture thing.
If you take Slack, for example, another B2B sort of tool, they developed a chat kind of program, but it was really tying into this culture of we want less emails.
Yeah.
And how to communicate.
Yeah.
And again, people kind of bought into that culture, into that vibe. And hence, Slack is what it is today.
Exactly. So we've got a couple manufacturers in spaces where their products, while they are engineered products, they are considered commodities, meaning they have to build them this way. They can't change it, right? And so there is almost this feel from a product standpoint that is one for one. It doesn't matter who you pick. But we've got one client in particular that has so doubled down on culture that their website has been hideously ugly forever. And their brand perception is so powerful because of their values alignment, because how they do the business. Like, it's really interesting. Like, we've gotten to meet a lot of their clients and customers over the years. They are so similar to our client. And this is not traditional branding, right? Like, what's your website? Like, what's your logo? Like, of course, they have all of that. But it is exactly what you're talking about. And they have become extremely innovative in a space where everybody's like, there's nothing new under the sun here. It's never going to get. But they were so in touch with that community aspect that when they started listening to the broader problems simply because they wanted to serve people, they weren't thinking, oh, well, we don't do that. They were thinking, what if we did that? You know, and it's interesting because, you know, the founder, if you asked him 10, 15 years ago, he had no idea the things that he would have been infusing. Like, while he is wildly visionary, he didn't have these specifics in mind. And now innovation and community building is infused in their brand and obviously their culture. And it's just taken on this life of its own. It's just like so fun to be around because they are worthy of like people following them.
No, it's exciting because I think sometimes people might, in this case of this space of manufacturing, you just think there's really not a lot of room for innovation and growth. But I feel like a lot of the foundational elements of innovation can be found in manufacturing.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad that they've taken the time to really kind of take a step back, to really kind of understand who they are and really lean into and owning that innovation is a key pillar for their business.
Yeah.
And also understanding their culture.
Yeah.
And once you have that, those are things that can radiate outside externally and attract, you know, your other potential clients.
Exactly. It is so cool that you're saying that because the external market didn't realize how innovative they were, right? Like, they always have been. But to your point, like broadening it and inviting people into that. And so the market really felt like, wow, like they came on with a big splash, but honestly, they had been like that the entire time. But the visible portion to the rest of the community, you know, like took time before it really presented to the market.
No, it's interesting. If we take it to another industry, for example, not necessarily B2B, but if you think about, let's say, celebrities or like a performer, for example, those performers, let's say a music artist, ones that tend to be very successful is because they took that, they identified with something that was important, a belief, but then they brought something new. They innovated.
Yeah.
And that then drove to changing the culture, adding to the culture. And so we see that a lot just even in other areas.
Absolutely. And I think weirdly, that's such a great example, especially for B2B, because talent's not enough. And people need to remember that. Like, talent might get you famous or successful in the beginning, but it is not the sustaining factor. Like, while you can't rest on your laurels, like, so there has to be so much more substance if you're going to be a truly foundational long-term player, no matter what market you're in.
Indeed.
I love it. Okay. So the next one we've gone on here is loyalty. And it's funny because this is the one that it's like, oh my gosh, like, it's so important to name it, even though this should be self-evident, but you want to do this on purpose. You don't just want to hope people are loyal. So talk about culture and brand, you know, as relates to loyalty.
Well, I think as people buy in more into your culture, what you stand for, what you believe, that creates that sense of loyalty. That now you develop this community that is loyal and they're right there with you as you continue to grow and elevate. And so that's, again, an important part of doing business, you know, is loyalty. It's kind of missing today in a sense.
Yeah.
And so I think once people buy into what you're servicing, what you're offering, your culture, that helps strengthen that loyalty connection that you have with clients.
Do you know, I think in B2B too, this one's so important, right? So one of the benefits that business-to-business companies have are that there's a lot of niching down, right? So there's only so many players in your industry or that do exactly what you do. Now, granted, I mean, there's some environments where there are a lot, but often there can be smaller or more niche markets, no matter how many players there are. But everybody's kind of playing it safe. Everybody kind of looks like one another. Like, people have a tendency to be like, oh, culture happens internally. It's about our hiring or it's about our leadership. But when you expand this idea and then try to drive loyalty on a whole nother level, all of a sudden it opens up so many tools to really turn culture into a growth engine because it does give people more to latch onto. Like, let's go.
Yes.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, and the fourth one that you had on here, and I've kind of woven it in, so like
Yeah.
I've been teasing this one the whole time, honestly, but it's the one that's so exciting, and I think so many B2B companies don't do as well as they could. I think they leave this on the table, is building community, like on purpose, separate from the outcomes of community.
Yes, indeed. I mean, and you can do that a lot of different ways. I mean, it could be easy. It's just developing a newsletter, and communicating and letting your clients know this is what we're doing today.
Yeah.
But your community is a great place for you to get testimonials that you can leverage as you're trying to win new business. So don't take the small things for granted in this space. Community can be huge for you. It could be your biggest advocate in helping you to close a deal. Don't forget about that aspect.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And it's so fun. Like, it's so fun. Like, if you're community building, there's a whole aspect of having impact beyond the invoice where you can truly start to say, you know, organizationally, like, this is how we want to change the world. Like, this is the impact that we want to have in people's minds and hearts, even beyond just what they pay us to do. And, again, let's go. Like,
Yes.
so exciting.
And I've seen the power of community, even from my previous life working at various companies, you know, from working on a brand like Snapple.
Yeah.
Oh my God, they're so fanatical. But it was infectious too. Like, you start to get pulled into, you know, the power of the brand and what it means for individuals. Even with a brand like, let's say, Dolby, it's something that you can't even see.
Yeah.
But there are so many people that are passionate about, you know, vision and sound and what Dolby can provide. And so again, it goes back to taking the time to really foster and build those connections.
Exactly. I love it. Okay, so final wrap up. What are some practical things? So if a client's coming to you saying, I think we have something special and it's under leveraged, how do we grow our culture beyond our walls? How do we infuse our brand with our culture? Where do you start? Like, how do you help people? What are some practical things?
Well, I would say first, we need to align on what is that culture.
Yeah.
So we have to take kind of the step back and kind of go through the process to really understand who are you? So whether, you know, it goes back to looking at your purpose, your mission, your values, and making sure you're aligned with that. Once you have that alignment, then you can start infusing it into your communication materials.
Yeah.
And it could be as easy as, you know, your CRM systems and your email. It could be how you message, your thought leadership through LinkedIn, for example. So there's a lot of different ways that you can then kind of push out what that is. And then it becomes more of a 360 kind of approach. You want to make sure that everything that you're doing, that you're reflecting and tying back to what you've identified and agreed upon as the things that help define your culture.
Exactly. You know, and we use this phrase a lot, of course, but it's because it's true. I mean, this is decision-making criteria. So you were literally saying, write down the exact words, because assumptions, and it's amazing, like even your core group of founding members, if you will, in a company, they will use different words to describe what that culture is. And when you grow, those nuances can take on a life of their own that deteriorate the core. Not because someone's rotten or because they're trying to harm it, but it's unstewarded, if you will, where there's no one really intentionally being like, okay, come back in. Like, and people have their own personal brand, right? So like, and we want that. We want amazing leaders to lead with their own style that infuses their team. That then rolls back up into the core brand. But people have a tendency to lay their personalities and their personal perspectives on top of the company. Yeah. And a lot of times it does water it down. I know that sounds weird, but you've got to return these bold voices in your company to something core and simple that can infuse across all of the different humans that are then going to add value to your company.
No, I'm glad that you brought that point up. I recently went through a workshop working with a client, and it was very interesting to see as we started talking about different elements related to culture and values, how people had different kind of thoughts.
Yeah.
And so I think even internally, it's important to kind of write things down, verbalize it, to gain that alignment, to make sure that you're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're moving so fast, going after that next deal, and there's assumptions that are made.
Yes.
And so sometimes you have to slow down. I know it's hard to do that, but take the time, because it's going to be so worth it in the end, because then you're going to see people advocating for you that you never thought would. People will start to know this is what you stand for. And that's an amazing feeling when you can start seeing that in your particular industry.
Exactly. And it comes out in the details, but you can't start with the details like too often people do. So what I mean by that is, your emails could take on big personality. Now that sounds very different for different companies, right? Whether it's bold or soft or playful or silly or quiet or sophisticated, but can take on big personality. And all of these things start rolling into how you present as a company, type of events that you put on, the kind of swag that you give away. And if it truly rolls out from something interesting and true about your company, where people are like, that's clever. But see, the cleverness didn't show up without the real. And so it's like all of these things start taking on a life of their own because the humans know how to steward that core culture. So it is definitely what you mentioned before, slowing down in order to speed up. So
yeah, I love that.
So
Slow
true.
down to speed up.
So true. I love it. Absolutely. LaShanda, thank you so much. Any final thoughts or encouragements that you want to give the audience?
To just not really forget about culture. Culture can be an amazing growth tool for your business, but it's important that you are aligned internally about what is that culture, what is it that you want to stand for. But it's a great place to set foundation for trust and relevancy, and ultimately help drive loyalty. So
I love it. And this is about giving your team and the other people that engage with your company and your brand and your culture aspects of having a life worth living. And that's literally what we're challenging you guys with, is if you are stewarding a business, no matter what your title is or no matter what your role, but especially if you are a founder or in the C-suite, come on, you have to do this every day anyways. Go big, right? Like let your heart shine and just do the work to truly make a big impact, because it will become a growth engine for you, and one where you jump out of bed every morning, and so does your team to be a part of. So thank you guys so much. Definitely hit that like button and the subscribe. But we love comments. We love hearing your questions, your thoughts. We actually, because it's part of our culture, even love your skepticism and your arguments, so that we can all get sharper and sharper together. So we will see you next week. Thank you so much. Thank you, LaShanda.
thank you. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. Onward and upward, you guys.